run! Oh God, run faster! We have to get out of here!
August 24th in the year 79 was just another summer morning in the Roman city of Pompeii. The sun rose over the Bay of Naples as 20,000 people woke up in their homes and prepared for another day. Nobody knew that in just a few hours, their entire world would vanish under tons of volcanic ash and pumice. This is the story of a city that disappeared in one day, but taught us more about ancient Roman life than any other place on Earth. Before we dive in, drop a comment and let me know which city you're watching this from right now. Pompeii was not just any Roman town, but one of the richest and most successful cities in the entire empire. Located near modern Naples in southern Italy, it sat in the shadow of Mount Vesuvius, which everyone thought was just a harmless mountain. The city had everything a Roman could want, including massive public baths, a huge amphitheater, dozens of restaurants, bakeries on every street, and beautiful houses with colorful paintings on the walls. About 20,000 people called this place home, from wealthy merchants to enslaved workers who kept the city running every single day. The Romans who lived in Pompeii had very different views about human relationships and the body compared to modern society today. Their culture was remarkably open about intimate matters in ways that surprise visitors to museums, even in our modern times. You can see this in the artwork they painted on walls, the statues they placed in their gardens, and even the items they wore as jewelry and good luck charms. For Romans, these images were not shameful, but were part of everyday life, religious beliefs, and even their sense of humor and protection. Walk through the ancient streets today, and you will find explicit frescoes on the walls of homes, shops, taverns, and public buildings throughout the city. These were not hidden away in private rooms, but displayed openly where anyone walking past could see them, including children and visitors. The Romans believed that certain symbols showing male anatomy could bring good luck and protect against the evil eye, so they placed these images everywhere. Outside bakeries, you might see paintings of fertility gods, and in wealthy homes the dining rooms had elaborate frescoes showing gods and mortals in intimate encounters as entertainment for dinner guests who reclined on couches. The most famous example of Pompeii's open culture was a building near the city center that archaeologists discovered in 1862. This establishment had small rooms, a waiting area, and walls covered with explicit paintings showing different positions and acts that customers could request. Each small room had a stone bed with a mattress, and the paintings above each doorway advertised what happened inside. The building employed several women, and prices were surprisingly cheap, costing about the same as a loaf of bread or a cup of wine. This tells us that such services were considered normal, everyday transactions in Roman society, not something hidden or particularly special. But here is what makes this place even more interesting from a historical perspective when you think about Roman culture. The workers in this building were not free citizens making their own choices, but were enslaved women and sometimes men who had no control over their lives. Romans did not see anything wrong with this system because they viewed enslaved people as property without rights. The paintings we see today were basically a menu for customers, and graffiti on the walls names specific workers and describes what customers thought of their experiences. This dark reality shows how differently ancient Romans thought about human dignity, freedom, and basic rights compared to our values today. Now let me tell you about Marcus Viconius Primus, whose house archaeologists fully excavated in the 1950s near the Forum. Marcus was a wealthy merchant who sold wine and garum, which was a fermented fish sauce that Romans put on everything they ate. His house had 20 rooms, beautiful garden courtyards, and walls painted with expensive red pigment made from ground cinnabar mineral. But what shocked the archaeologists were the explicit paintings in his private dining room, showing mythological scenes of gods in intimate situations. These were not crude drawings, but expensive, skillfully painted artworks created by professional artists that Marcus commissioned specifically for entertaining his dinner guests. Religious beliefs in Pompeii mixed Roman, Greek, and Egyptian gods into a fascinating spiritual world that accepted human desires as natural. The Temple of Isis still stands in Pompeii today, showing how important Egyptian religion had become in Roman life by this time. The goddess Isis was connected to fertility, motherhood, magic, and the cycles of nature, and her worship involved secret ceremonies. Meanwhile, Venus was the patron goddess of Pompeii, and citizens believed she blessed romantic love, physical attraction, and fertility for the whole city. The god Priapus, always shown with exaggerated male anatomy, was painted in gardens and doorways as a guardian against thieves and bad luck. Public bathhouses were the social centers of Pompeii, where men and women came to bathe, exercise, gossip, and conduct business deals every afternoon. The Stabian baths, which you can still visit today, were enormous complexes with hot rooms, cold pools, exercise yards, and areas for well massages. Romans spent hours there almost every day, and nudity was completely normal since everyone bathed without clothes. Men and women bathed separately in most bathhouses, but some smaller private baths allowed mixed bathing, which often led to flirting and romantic encounters. Graffiti on bathroom walls throughout Pompeii describes these encounters in very explicit language that would make modern people blush when reading the translations. The most surprising discovery came when archaeologists started reading the graffiti scratched into walls all over the city by ordinary people. There are over 11,000 graffiti messages preserved in Pompeii, and many of them describe intimate encounters, declare love for specific people, advertise services, or make crude jokes about neighbors and public figures. One message near the forum says that a man named Celadus was the heartthrob of all the girls in town. Another message describes an encounter in explicit detail and gives the date it happened. These were not written by educated poets, but by everyday people who wanted to brag, remember moments, or advertise themselves to potential partners. But everything changed on that terrible day in August when Mount Vesuvius exploded with the force of many atomic bombs. The eruption began around 1 in the afternoon when a massive explosion sent a column of ash and pumice 15 miles straight up into the sky. For the first few hours, most people in Pompeii probably thought they could wait out the eruption inside their homes and businesses. Pumice stones, which are light volcanic rocks, started raining down on the city, piling up in the streets and on rooftops at a rate of 6 inches every hour. Some people grabbed valuable items and tried to flee immediately, while others stayed inside, hoping the eruption would stop soon. A teenager named Pliny the Younger was staying with his uncle across the bay in Misenum, about 20 miles away. He watched the entire disaster from a safe distance and wrote detailed letters about what he saw years later. Pliny described how the eruption cloud looked like a massive pine tree spreading across the sky, blocking out the sun and turning day into night. His uncle, Pliny the Elder, was a Roman admiral and natural scientist who wanted to observe the eruption up close and rescue friends trapped in coastal towns. The elder Pliny sailed his ships across the bay toward the eruption, but toxic gases killed him on the beach at Stabii the next morning. Let me tell you about the Garden of the Fugitives, one of the most heartbreaking discoveries in all of Pompeii. Archaeologists found 13 people huddled together in an orchard garden near the amphitheater, trying to shelter from the falling ash and pumice. The group included men, women, and children who died together when the pyroclastic surge hit around 7:30 the next morning. You can see their plaster casts in the exact positions they died, showing parents trying to shield children, people clutching each other, and faces frozen in expressions of terror and pain. These were probably family members and neighbors who thought the thick garden walls might protect them from the eruption. By midnight on August 24th, Pumice and ash had piled up 9 feet deep in the streets of Pompeii. Roofs were collapsing under the weight, crushing people who had decided to shelter inside their homes rather than flee into the dangerous streets. But the worst was yet to come in the early morning hours of August 25th. Around 7:30 in the morning, the eruption column collapsed and sent superheated gas and ash racing down the mountain at over 100 miles per hour. This pyroclastic surge, reaching temperatures of 500 degrees, killed everyone still alive in Pompeii instantly, flooding into every building and street corner. The volcanic material that buried Pompeii created a perfect time capsule that preserved everything exactly as it was that day. Wood, food, fabric, and even human bodies left hollow spaces in the hardened ash as they decomposed over centuries. In 1863, an Italian archaeologist named Giuseppe Fiorelli invented a brilliant technique by pouring plaster into these hollow spaces. This created incredibly detailed casts showing people in their final moments, complete with facial expressions, clothing folds, and even the texture of hair. You can see a man covering his face, a dog struggling against its chain, and a pregnant woman curled protectively around her belly. Now here is something that shocked the modern world when archaeologists first uncovered it in the 1800s. They found a collection of explicit statues, paintings, and objects that seemed too scandalous for public display in Victorian times. The King of Naples ordered all these items locked away in a secret room called the Secret Cabinet, which only male scholars with special permission could enter. This collection stayed hidden from public view for over 100 years because European society considered it too inappropriate, even though these were authentic ancient Roman artifacts. Today, you can visit the Secret Cabinet in the Naples Archaeological Museum, but you have to be at least 14 years old to enter. The Secret Cabinet contains marble statues of gods with exaggerated anatomy, bronze wind chimes shaped like flying male organs with bells, oil lamps decorated with explicit scenes, and drinking cups with surprises revealed as you drank the wine. There are also the famous frescoes removed from the walls of certain buildings in Pompeii, showing detailed scenes that archaeologists initially found difficult to explain to the public. These objects were not pornography in the Roman mind, but were household items, religious symbols, decorations, and good luck charms that people used every single day without thinking twice about it. One of the most fascinating survivors was a man whose story we know from evidence found in his escaped body outline. Near the Nisirian Gate, archaeologists discovered a man who had been running when the surge hit and killed him mid-stride. His body fell forward, and volcanic material preserved the exact moment of his death, including coins spilled from his pocket and a bag of tools he was carrying. Analysis of the space where his body was showed he was a strong man in his 20s, probably a laborer or craftsman. He had almost made it out of the city when the pyroclastic flow caught him just 50 meters from open countryside where he might have survived. The eruption buried not just one city, but several towns around the Bay of Naples, including Herculaneum, Stabii, and Aplantis. Herculaneum was a smaller, wealthier town closer to the volcano that got buried under 60 feet of volcanic material. While Pompeii was covered in ash and pumice, Herculaneum was buried in superheated mud that carbonized wood and preserved organic materials even better than in Pompeii. Archaeologists have found intact wooden furniture, food still sitting on tables, papyrus scrolls in a library, and even a whole wooden boat on the ancient beach where people tried to escape. Christianity had just started spreading through the Roman Empire when Vesuvius erupted, and some early Christians saw the destruction as divine punishment. They pointed to Pompeii's open culture and moral practices as proof that God was angry with Roman society. However, historians today understand that volcanic eruptions have nothing to do with human behavior and are simply natural disasters. The eruption of Vesuvius was caused by pressure building up in the magma chamber beneath the volcano for hundreds or thousands of years until it finally exploded with catastrophic force. But did anyone actually survive from Pompeii itself on that terrible day in 79 AD? The answer is yes, though we do not know exactly how many people escaped alive out of the 20,000 residents. Remember that the eruption started around 1 in the afternoon and gave people several hours of warning before the deadly pyroclastic surges came the next morning. Many people, especially younger and healthier individuals, probably fled south towards Pompeii or north toward Naples during those crucial first hours when escape was still possible. The 2,000 bodies found in Pompeii represent people who stayed too long, were too old or sick to flee, or were trapped by their responsibilities like guarding valuables. One survivor we know about was a man named Cornelius Fuscus who wrote his name on a wall in Pompeii before the eruption. Years later, his name appears in historical records as a military commander serving under Emperor Vespasian, proving he got out alive and went on to have a successful career. There must have been thousands of other survivors who fled the city and resettled in Naples, Rome, or other towns, but they left no written records for us to find. Some people probably returned months or years later trying to dig down to their buried homes and recover valuable items, but the city lay under 20 feet of hardened volcanic material that made excavation nearly impossible with ancient tools. Pompeii lay forgotten and buried for almost 1,700 years until 1599, when an architect digging a water channel accidentally discovered some ancient walls. Serious excavation did not begin until 1748, when the King of Naples started organized digging to find treasures and artworks. For the next 2 centuries, treasure hunters and archaeologists dug up the city, sometimes destroying evidence in their rush to find valuable statues and jewelry. It was not until the 1900s that scientific archaeology began treating Pompeii as a complete historical site rather than just a source of museum pieces. Today, you can walk through about 2/3 of ancient Pompeii, which covers about 165 acres of excavated ruins. The remaining third still lies buried under volcanic material, waiting for future archaeologists to uncover its secrets with better technology and methods. Every year, new discoveries emerge from ongoing excavations, including houses, shops, artwork, and even human remains that add to our understanding of Roman daily life. In 2021, archaeologists announced the discovery of a perfectly preserved fast food restaurant complete with colorful frescoes and food residue still in the serving containers. The Naples Archaeological Museum houses the largest collection of objects from Pompeii, including the plaster casts of eruption victims, jewelry, household items, tools, and weapons. You can see bronze cooking pots still stained with ancient food, medical instruments used by Roman doctors, children's toys, and pet collars with the owner's name engraved on them. The museum also contains all those controversial items from the secret cabinet that Victorian society found too shocking to display. Modern visitors can see these artifacts as important historical evidence showing how differently Romans thought about the human body, relationships, and daily life compared to later European Christian culture. What makes Pompeii so incredibly valuable to historians is that it shows us real life, not the idealized version we get from official monuments and literature. The graffiti tells us what ordinary people actually thought and did. The buildings show us where they worked and relaxed, and the objects reveal their daily routines and private moments. We can see what they ate for their last meal, what jewelry they chose to wear, which gods they prayed to, and how they decorated their homes. No other archaeological site in the world gives us such a complete, unfiltered snapshot of ancient life frozen in a single moment of time. The story of Pompeii reminds us that entire civilizations can vanish in a matter of hours through forces completely beyond human control. These were real people with hopes, dreams, relationships, and routines just like ours, even though their values and customs were very different from modern society. They loved, they laughed, they worked, they fought, and they never imagined that we would still be talking about them 2,000 years after a mountain killed them all. Walking through Pompeii today feels like stepping through a doorway into the past, where you can almost hear the voices echoing in the empty streets and see the shadows of people who have been gone for 2 millennia. Their city died in a day, but their story will live forever as long as people keep telling it and learning from what they left behind. Incognito chats aren't saved to history or used to train models.